this kind of whole, I personally feel this is coming off the heels of Farrakhan's 4th of July speech.
Sure.
And this is kind of what I feel is the energy, and a lot of people look up to Farrakhan. I mean, I've interviewed NOI members multiple times.
Right.
I've used FOI for security. Overall, I think the NOI is a group that helped out a lot of people.
Right.
Hearing statements like that bothers me. Jay Electronica chimed in with the whole thing. He called the rabbi a coward and so forth. And Michael Rappaport actually responded. He says the man with a penchant for devil white girls. He said, you love white girls like a rapper who can't finish his own album loves Jay-Z.
It's what I find, I believe anybody who uses their belief to then tell somebody that their belief is wrong. The whole thing about this idea of serving a higher being is that it's supposed to lift you up, I would imagine. Like, I believe in God. I just don't believe that everybody who says they work for him really do. And I've yet to find fervently religious people on the whole, in the aggregate, who purposely try to make the world better. Like the people who have the loudest megaphones, the people who have the most exposure, the people who are the most visible, seem to have a vested interest in telling somebody they're wrong and I'm right. And I don't understand it. It was one of the reasons I stopped kind of being involved in religion, because I saw what it did and how it makes people act. If you love God, then you have to love people. And if you and you have to love them regardless of who they are, where they're from. It's almost like when I point things out, people are like, oh, you're racist, which is impossible for me. I don't have a system that's going to hold people back. But I think that we're so connected in this country to a system that's unfair, that pointing out what's unfair seems like racism to people, or pointing out there are things that are truthful, there are things that are not. But when that truth, or when you connect your idea of the truth to telling somebody how they're bad and you're good and he loves you and this being loves you more,
right,
I think you've already lost.
Right, because part of the thing that Nick said was that white people, because they lack melanin, with melanin comes compassion, and therefore they're not as human. They're more animalistic. And for example, when you look at NOI teachings, they believe that there was a guy named Yaqub, who had 59,999 followers, and he took them all to an island, and he started to breed out the black traits, right, and he would kill the dark-skinned babies.
Right.
And he created white people, right, on this island.
I've had people.
He lived to the age of 152.
Right.
So he had a lot of interesting, things about him. And you could believe this, or you could look at Bill Nye, who explains how people that live, near the equator have a certain amount of vitamin D. And, based on where you live in accordance to the equator, the vitamin D levels change. That's why you have lighter skin versus darker
right,
skin based on where you are in the equator.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you're deeply religious, you're probably going to believe the Yaqub story.
I don't know anybody who's deeply religious. I don't know anybody who's deeply religious to believe that. I know that I've heard that I said,
you've heard the Yaqub thing.
Yeah, a dozen times.
Yeah.
Dozens of times.